know what y'all want to hear about, and we'll get to that. But first, look at the studio setup that I put together, all right? I'll put this on my own birthday. Put this up on my own birthday. I'm doing this for y'all because I am a benevolent ruler. I'm always trying to enhance your experience. Why am I putting together this video so you guys can watch it? I'm doing it for myself so that I can look forward in the future and see look back in the past and see all the mistakes that I made and see how far I've come. And also, I don't see too much information out there like this to where people are giving people a heads up on what they have to make sure they pay attention to when going through this media process, not just from a production standpoint, but from just a logistical standpoint, a whole bunch of other stuff. I feel like that's important information that needs to get out there. So why not put it out there? Because I don't see too much of it out there anyway. So how did I get into this situation? I found this outlet by watching a whole bunch of press conferences because I'm a fan of the sport. And I just would listen to people call out their outlets. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I heard one, emailed them. Here's my resume. Here's my expertise and credentials and all the stuff that I have accomplished. I can provide a portfolio if you'd like. They got back to me pretty fast. I'm like, oh, great. What are you looking to do? I was like, I want to cover local and regional shows on top of major organizations because I understand with local and regional, they'll allow you to do much more on the production side of things than other shows because they outright want to own everything that they put out. Local and regional shows are willing to sacrifice ownership of their products so that they can grow in popularity. So that's my mindset. I want to work on the production side of things. And so they understood that and they're like, okay, cool. What shows do you want to do? And I wasn't prepared for that. I was like, oh, snap. But also, my eyes were bigger than my stomach in this situation because I was like, I want to show y'all just how willing I am to do this. So I was like, I want to cover the PFL championships. I want to cover Holland versus Wonder Boy. I want to cover the Invicta card, but not this one that's coming up because it's too short notice, but the very next one I want to cover. And that I think those are like the top 3 ones that I put up. And they were like, okay, cool. Let's do the PFL one. Mind you, I had already applied for credentials through myself before even doing this, and I just didn't think I'd get them. So I thought I'd go talk to an outlet, they'd help me, and then they'd get me credentials that way too, in case I didn't get it on my end. And I ended up getting it through my end. But anyway, they were like, okay, cool, apply, but make sure you apply under these certain categories so that you don't miscategorize yourself unless you get credentials. And so when I got my credentials back from applying through myself, I emailed the person who I did them through and had to make those changes as well as change the outlet that I was working with, which also messed up someone else who was working underneath the same outlet who was trying to cover the same event as well. He lost his credentials the day before the event started because of me doing that. Now, I didn't know that was going to happen. I wasn't aware that someone else was also going to cover that show too, so I feel bad about that. But yeah, so once that happened, I got the credentials pretty fast. I'm like, oh shoot, this is New York. I got to make sure I have a bunch of money. So I started grinding for the next week. There wasn't a day that I did not work. I was grinding hard to make sure I hit this budget. I hit it pretty fast. And I immediately was like, okay, great. Now let's work on logistics. So I was like, I'm going to drive to save money because I'm not flying into New York. That's crazy. Round trips and one-way flights are insane price, especially on that short notice. I had like a week short. I had like 2 weeks to prepare, 1.5 weeks to prepare. And so I was like, okay, we got to drive. On top of that, we got to stay outside of New York. And on top of that, I got to make sure that I'm choosing like Airbnbs and cheap hotels for me to be able to manage all this because I want to also have an emergency fund in case something bad that I don't expect to happen happens. So that's my mind state going in. And so I'm prepping all my equipment the day before knowing that, oh, I'm going to kill this. I'm confident because I worked on the production side of stuff. I'm like, confident in my abilities. Why shouldn't I be? There's nothing wrong with confidence. And little did I know there were some things that I was not prepared for. Starting off, I was driving from Michigan south into Pittsburgh and then headed to New York because I didn't want to go through Canada because at the time it was foolish. I should have gone through Canada. It would have been a cheaper route. It would have been faster too. And I could have saved a lot of money, but I didn't do that. So I go south and I stop at a nice hotel in Pittsburgh. But on the way there are tolls. And I'm from the South. I'm from Orlando, so I'm used to $3 tolls, $5 tolls, 75 cents, 25 cents. No, you hit that Ohio Turnpike, 1533 in your face, boy. I'm like, I don't know how many hits I can take from this because I don't know how many tolls they're going to be. I'm like, oh, snap, they got me with this one. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So then I hit another toll. I forget where it's at. That joint was 30-something dollars. They measure it based off of the mileage traveled from select tolls. So if I would have gotten off and went somewhere else, the ticket when I presented it to them wouldn't have been as great a value. But because the distance that I traveled and the mileage, they hit me for a home. No, that's a grand slam. They hit me with a grand slam for the amount of prices that I had to pay for them tolls. So I'm like, how many more of these can I take? I finally get to my Pittsburgh hotel. I hit the bed angry. I'm like, ah! Why? What am I thinking? I'm like, you idiot! You're gonna die out here. And I'm like tweaking. I go to sleep and I wake up and I'm motivated though. I'm motivated. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna prove I can do this. I ain't backing down nothing. Because that was one of the promises that they made me to do too. They were like, if you ever say you're gonna cover a show, do not back out unless it's an emergency. So that was the other reason why when they said, all right, let's do the PFL, when I was like, nah, I'm not doing it no more. I was like, all right, we're doing it. And I remember that the next day when I woke up, I'm like, you're built different. You better not back out of this one. You better not back out of this one, Kairos. You know you got to stand on this. So I'm like, all right, we're standing on it. I continue the drive, and this is like about 5.5 hours left of the drive. I hit a few more tolls. They're not as like aggressive as those ones were, but they're there. You felt them. And I finally make it to New Jersey. So I have about, it's still a bunch of daylight left, and the press conference and all the media stuff start the day after. So I wanted to get there a day before so I can get used to everything, check my equipment, relax, all that jazz. And so I do all that, and then right before I go to bed, you know how before you go to bed and you have all your clothes lined out when you were younger, going into middle school and high school, and you got your outfit and you're like, I'm gonna kill this shit tomorrow. That's what I was doing before I woke up to do the meeting. I'm like, I'm gonna show tomorrow. I'm gonna murk this. And also, I was looking logistically at different places to park in Manhattan. There were places that were gonna charge you $50-something to park. And it wasn't gonna be no 50 something for the whole day or overnight. It was 50 something for 3 hours, 50 something for 4. I'm like, oh, I'm sick. So I started looking at different garages and I finally found one that's like $37. And that's if you get in before 10 and then if you leave before 9 p.m., you're going. I'm like, all right, that's a garage I'm gonna go to from this one. And it's only 10-minute walk away from the Manhattan Center. I'm like, you're a genius already. Like, can't nobody fuck with you. I'm like, my confidence is very high because I'm like, shoot, I'm gonna make this look easy. I'm like, I'm gonna make this look easy. So I get there and I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning, ready to go, rock and roll. I'm like, I'm gonna get there I'm gonna leave 2 hours early. I'm gonna get there, and by the time I get there, it'll be an hour till we're supposed to get in. And I'm gonna chill and do whatever I gotta do. So I arrive, but before I do, I have to drive into New York from New Jersey. Boy, I forgot about more toll, and they're cash only tolls. I'm like, bro, it's 2022. Let people use their cards. Why are we not using cards in 2022? They're like cash only toll. And if you want, we can send it in the mail and you could pay it by phone or whatever, but it's extra. I'm like, all right, how much is it? $8.33 for that. I'm like, yo! And I quickly do the math. I'm like, that's $16.66 just for a round trip. 16, 32, 48. That's almost $50 alone on tolls through this entire excursion. I'm like, and if I want to see somebody or hang out with some of my friends, then I either got to stay later and pay extra on my parking in Manhattan, or I got to zigzag back it up. I'm like, yo, they got me again. So I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all these tolls and pay them on the back end, because even though it's going to be more, it's not taken away from my emergency fund right now. So that was my mindset. Sure, I'm going to pay more later, but you know, I ain't losing the money right now. So I do that, and I was hard-headed too. I didn't want to take out cash. I didn't want to take out cash and take away from that fund. I make it into the city. Very, very nice area. Make it to the car garage. Boop, out, boop, walk right down to the hotel. I walk in and I see a whole bunch of people there early too. I'm like, okay, so I was right to come in here an hour early. And I'm looking around. I'm pretty observant type of person. So I'm looking to see who looks like they've been here before, who looks like they don't know what they're doing, who looks clueless. Because in the event that I need to ask someone a question, I'm going to ask someone who knows what they're doing who has been here. No disrespect to those people, but I'm also new. I don't want to hear advice from someone in my position. I want to hear someone's advice who's been in my position. So I take account of that, and I'm watching them, seeing what they do, seeing exactly what they're about to do. And a few of them get up and start walking to the back early. And I want to say probably 40 something minutes early. So I pick up my stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll walk back there with them. And I'm also networking through this too. So I'm talking to different people. I'm not just talk. I'm not only networking with people who look like they've been there before and done that. I'm networking with everyone. So I walk back there, and then it's about another 40 something minute break until they bring us into the actual press conference. It's a TV studio. If you ever been into a studio, I say that so it's so casual. It's not too many people have been into a TV studio, but you have a massive box on the second story that looks down upon everybody else, which is the control room. You typically have a machine camera that operates to have movement. You have a crew, you have the stage, you have chairs for the audience. It's a typical TV studio, and the media is sitting where the audience would sit, and then they have a stage on two levels where the fighters are going to be sitting, and it's a very professional environment. I walk in into the studio and I see a lot of people not sitting in the front. I'm like, now I know a lot about cinematography. I know a lot about cameras. I know a lot about filming. I'm gonna sit in the front. Y'all are scared to sit in the front. I'm gonna walk right to the front. And by the time I get to the front, there's only space in the second row because I saw this person's stuff in the single chair that was open in the first row. And I'm not gonna take somebody's stuff and move it. Like that's a dick move. I'm not gonna do that. And so I set my stuff behind that chair and then off to the side because I know this person might be huge or this person might be huge, and then they might be in front of my camera. So I'm like, okay, bet. So I set it off to the side. They sit down. They're still huge enough to block out a portion of the camera. So I zoom in to avoid that, yada, yada. Show's getting ready to start. 30 seconds. Just like a TV studio. 30 seconds. I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm getting my camera. I'm like, plugging it all up, attaching my equipment, did it all. I'm like, we're good to go. The person in front of me is a well-known media member. They're like, you're in the way of the camera. We need you to move. I'm like, yo, y'all told this person they gotta go. I'm not gonna say their name like that. I ain't gonna put them on blast. But they made that person get up and stand off to the side. And I'm like, oh, if they did that to him, they definitely gonna do that to me if they need to. So I'm like trying to make myself seem small. I dropped my tripod down low. I scooted over. I'm like, not gonna be me. Not gonna be me. And so they start the press conference. And one mistake that I made is before it started, there were a few media members backstage who were like, "Hey, does anyone have a question for this person?" I don't got a question for that person, but I didn't understand what game was being played. They're like, "Okay, cool. Since you guys don't have a question for that person, I'll go first. That person's going second. Boom, 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 and whoever goes after goes after." It wasn't about whether or not they were going to ask that person, but they wanted to make sure no one asserted themselves so that they could assert themselves. Lesson learned. So I'm in there and I'm taking this from the position of a production person. So I'm operating my camera, making sure I rack focus when I have to, making sure I move it. And I'm in that zone, not thinking about, I'm wearing two hats right now. I have to be prepared for when the mic finally gets over to my general location for me to assert myself to ask for the microphone so I can ask a question. I was so unaware about how quickly it was going and what I was doing during the time that I didn't even ask. And by the time I was aware, they were like, not even by this, I wasn't even aware. I only became aware when they're like, is there any more questions? And then they're like, I'm like, oh snap, I blew it. I'm like, next time though. I'm like, next time. I understand I made a mistake and now we're gonna rectify it. So that was it. I packed up my equipment and I'm headed back to the lobby. I'm thinking that this place has Wi-Fi because it's a hotel. No, they don't have Wi-Fi to the media members. At least you know it has Wi-Fi for the people there. So all the higher up media members who have been there and who know people, they got the Wi-Fi code. And I'm thinking to myself, they ain't gonna give it to me. That's ignorant though. That's ignorant. I should not have thought that. I should have just went up and asked somebody. But I'm like, whatever. Like I don't know. I just thought I assumed that there's gonna be like some stingy and stuck up people without even verifying that. So I was like, whatever. I will take my stuff home, edit it there, upload it that way. Anyway, and I gave the person who's the head of the media group that I'm covering for, I gave her the heads up. She's like, okay, cool, boom, boom, boom. So I get home and I had some technical difficulties with my laptop, but I'm really good at troubleshooting. It was just this factor of the computer does this thing where it doesn't give permission to certain softwares if it has it set so not operate when there's battery life or some stupid thing like that. I was quickly able to turn it off and I was able to handle business. So I finally did that and I was getting ready to upload the long format content to the YouTube and Facebook. But then because I'm logging in from a foreign device in a different state. It asked for verification codes and it sent it to that person's device. And I was like, hey, can you give me the code and plug it in for me? They were unable to do it. So I could not upload the long format stuff. But I still got it on this camera. I'm going to start uploading like clips throughout so that you can see what I put together. So I get that work done. I'm still unable to upload the long format stuff, but it's fine. I do the short stuff and I keep that going. And I go to sleep. I'm like, all right, not a bad day. We made some mistakes. We have some tactical errors going on, but we should be fine. Little did I know, I wake up to an email. I don't wake up to an email. I wake up, do everything, prep. I'm getting ready to leave, but this event is at like 6 or no, it's at 4 p.m. I think something like that later in the day. So I got a whole bunch of time to do whatever. And I get an email throughout the day and it's just like, hey, your credentials for the fight night have been revoked. You are still permitted to come to the weigh-ins today, yada, yada, yada. And my mentality is I can control my emotions and I can lock it up and throw it away and not feel anything about it, especially to get a job done for the sake of, I'm like, this ain't going to affect my mood at all. I'm going to handle business today and then I'm going to address it when I need to address it. Like, because if I get angry at something, I can't function. And people see a side of me that they don't want to see. So I'm not going to bring that type of energy into a professional setting with a whole bunch of people who aren't familiar with me. I'm not going to do that. So I'm like, okay, bet. I pack up my stuff, get ready to go to the weigh-ins. I drive there, hit the tolls again. You know, they got to rack my money up. My garage that I went to the day before was closed on this day. And I'm like, because it's Thanksgiving, but all the garages were open. So I ended up going to a garage that was about $57 after tax. I know they straight burned me, dog. They hit me with a 98-yard run through the gut touchdown on me. Like I was just, it is what it is at that point. So already another tough situation for me, and I'm mad already. So I'm like, okay. I walk in, no, calm. I walk past the person who sent me the email about them revoking my stuff, and they're like, and she asked for my name, gave me my name. She was like, oh, okay. And she smiled at and put the bracelet on me. I'm like, see, I'm fake like you, so I can understand her being fake. I felt the fakeness, but whatever. So I'll walk into the studio, set up my stuff with like 3 minutes to go, and I'm looking around. I'm like, this place is not as full as it was. This place is not full at all. I'm like, where are the media members that were here yesterday? Over half of y'all aren't here today. And I'm shook. I'm like, did they lose credentials for this too? Or maybe they didn't go to the weigh-ins. Maybe they don't care. But I'm like, why would you cover the press conference and not the weigh-ins and then go to the show? What else you got to do? You know? So I put two and two together. I'm like, they probably lost them credentials. I don't know that for a fact though. I don't know that for a fact if they lost those credentials for that day as well. But I just assumed that. And I get back to my no, I don't. I hang out with my friends because I was like, you know what? Why should I put stuff out for these people who violated me like this? So I'm hanging out with my friends, going to bars, going to a restaurant, and I finally make it back to the hotel. But I had already let the owner of the outlet know exactly what happened. She's like, "What? This is unprofessional. This has never happened before." Mind you, I don't have experience with this, so I thought this was common. I'm like, "What did I do?" I'm like, "I did take 2 water bottles the day before because I was thirsty. Maybe they don't like you taking water bottles." I'm like, "Dang, they take their water serious." I'm thinking like the most stupid stuff ever. Thinking, holding. I'm like, "Yo, they're gonna get mad at me for taking some water," and so that's where my head was at too. I'm like, "Yo," and so when I finally get home, it's probably like 2 in the morning, something like no, it's not. It's probably like 1 in the morning when I make it home after drinks and everything. I drove sober. Come on now, don't do me like that. Um, I'm just in a. That's when I finally like, yo, I'm mad. I'm mad. I'm not gonna be able to cover this. So when the morning hit, I immediately emailed them and I was just like, hey, I spent hundreds of dollars coming to cover this event out of my own pocket and drove hundreds of miles. Y'all, I drove 700 miles and paid over $700 for this trip. And I can't cover the fight night press conference and they're like, yeah, sorry. I'm like, well, can I get reimbursed? And there's a whole bunch of people talking to me like I'm stupid. They're like, you better ask for this. You better, because I talked to a few other media members who weren't at this show covering, but they are long-term, lifelong media people. And they're like, you better demand this. You better. I'm like, I am. Y'all acting like I'm not going to do that, but I just know they won't do that. You know, like who am I? And so I ask, and they're like, nah, the best we can do is put you on a waiting list. Also, we would recommend you buy a ticket to the show but do it early because we're expecting a full house. I'm like, oh hell. I'm like, okay. We aren't playing football no more. We aren't playing football no more. We're playing something else. This is a different game now that y'all want to play. So I'm like, I'm looking through social media, looking through other people's stuff, seeing that there's a lot of people who did not cover the weigh-ins, as well as a lot of people who aren't talking anymore about the event. So I'm like, they must have revoked a bunch of credentials. And I go on Twitter, I get DMs from a few people who I met, who I networked with, saying, "Hey, hopefully you enjoy the show. We aren't going." I'm like, you too? I'm like, they revoked yours too? And I sent them the email about and they were like, yeah, we. And then I was like, that's interesting. So then I contacted a few other people. They got theirs revoked too. And I'm looking on Twitter. I'm like, nobody's saying anything about this. I'm like, they're counting on nobody saying nothing about it. I'm like, they got me fucked up. So I go on, and mind you, after I pack up all my stuff, I'm like a really my mind is very like technical. I was like, I'm gonna record the promo for this video right now. I was like, I'm gonna record myself walking to the car, throwing my stuff in the trunk, and closing the trunk. That's gonna be the promo to my video about this media week. I was like, I got time for it, you know? So I'm ignorant, bro. I'm so animated ignorant. So I'll put out this promo and then I'll get to driving. And I've been driving for about 2 hours. I'm like, nah, fuck that. I'm gonna speak on it since no one wants to speak about it. Since y'all, I get it. There's a lot of media members and journalists out there who are afraid of retribution for speaking up. I've never been afraid for none of that. I have never been the type of person who's like, well, what happens if they cut off my head if I stand up? No, you can try. I'm a kick step lane. I'm breaking. I'm ignorant, but I'm just not that person. I'm gonna speak up. And what happens, happens. You know, like it is what it is. But you definitely ain't gonna expect me to lie over and get fucked. That ain't gonna ever happen. So I go on Twitter and I'm like, the PFL just gave credentials to dozens of media members and revoked them the day before the fight night. I spoke to them. They told me that they could put me on a wait list and I could buy a ticket to attend the event. I spent hundreds of dollars on this, drove hundreds of miles. No, I said I spent over $700 and drove over 700, and that's not round trip. That's one way 700 miles for this organization, and they're not trying to reimburse me for it. They ain't gonna do nothing for it. And that tweet took flame fast. I wasn't expecting it to go that fast because, you know, like, I don't know. I just wasn't expecting it to go that hard because people weren't paying attention to my coverage of the event leading up to this. So I thought there's very little interest in this. But because of that, I guess that was just like, you know, negative stuff passes faster through social media. So I'm driving after I sent that text tweet, and it's been like 20 minutes. I get a call. I'm like, the fuck? I'm like, Las Vegas. I'm like, who do I know in Vegas? I'm thinking it's my mentor. I have a mentor that I've known for about 4 years. I'm thinking, all right, maybe my mentor got a new number. I open it. I'm like, hello. They're like, Kairos. I'm like, yes. Who am I speaking with? And they're like, hey, this is. And I'm not gonna say the name. They're like, this is the VP of blah, blah, blah for the PFL. They're not the VP of the PFL, but they're a VP of a section of the PFL. And I'm like, what? Shruggy? How they get my number? And they're like, we saw the tweet. We need you to delete that. Blah blah blah, blah something like that. And I didn't say yes or no to this. I'm just trying to listen to see, like, I don't know. I was watching college football. I was listening. I was driving at the same time, and I'm mad, so I can't really remember the entirety of the conversation. I don't want to make something up that didn't happen. But they definitely said they want me to delete that tweet. And then before they went into detail, they're like, "Let me call you back." So they hang up. I didn't delete the tweet until they called me back. They finally called me back, and the person was like, "Yeah, listen, there was a miscommunication. I understand that." But that is not the case. That didn't happen. I'm like, listen, I received an email, and dozens of other people received those emails too to corroborate this. So I don't know. He's like, I'm aware of that, but I am the head of this department, and I am telling you that there is space in this event for you guys. He was like, come back and I'm like, I've been driving for 3 hours. I can't turn around and make it back in time to do this, and I'm not gonna show up late. And then like, no, I'm not gonna put myself in a position to. No, I was like, I'm already too far away. I can't do that. He was like, well, how about we do this? You send me the receipts for all your expenses and we'll compensate you for that. And then we'll fly you out to the next event. I was like, okay, cool. They're like, okay. And in exchange, please delete that tweet and post a revision. I was like, deal. And you want to know why I was like, deal? Before I get into that, I deleted the tweet and I got a whole bunch of DMs. Why did you delete it, bro? I'm like, and there was a whole bunch of people who were either media members from that show. No, not a whole, I can't say a whole bunch of people. there was a few people, like 2 or 3 people, like, why did you delete it? And I didn't want to cut their necks off and tell them exactly what I was thinking. But I was like, listen, y'all weren't willing to advocate for yourselves. Y'all remained silent about them bending you over and fucking you. And you waited for me to speak up and do it. You didn't say anything about it until I had to bring it up and risk my neck for it. So in that moment, I realized that in the event that I am going to be properly rewarded and compensated for what I have had to go through, I am going to accept it. I'm looking out for me the same way you were looking out for yourself, your creds, and all that other stuff. Because there's a lot of politics that goes into media, not just in MMA media, but in media in general. And I have that knowledge. So going into this, I knew what to expect. But I guess a lot of people don't realize that that's how I'm looking from that perspective. I'm like, nah, y'all weren't trying to say shit in fear of retribution and retaliation. So that's why I'm gonna speak up. And then when I'm rewarded and I'm handled with this, that, and the third opportunities, I'm gonna take them. And y'all could do what y'all want. Because even during that entire thing, they ain't say nothing. They ain't say nothing. They would like the tweet and retweet, and that was it. Because they knew, all right, good. This person's gonna do our dirty work for us. I ain't gotta do nothing. I can keep my hands clean. That's great. Closed mouths don't get fed, and if you don't stick your hands out to get something, you're not gonna. Anyways, so as soon as they said that, I did what they did. I did what they told me to do, and I put it out there. And honestly, I know some people are thinking, why didn't you wait until they gave you the money, and why didn't you wait until this? Because I'm the type of person who operates in good faith. I operate in good faith, and I also understand that if I'm going to be wronged or done dirty, I'm going to respond accordingly. So I'm prepared for that. I'm going to let y'all know if I do get compensated back for it, and if I do end up being able to cover the PFL. And if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna go Pompeii. I'm gonna burn it down. I'm gonna do what I got to do. So I'm willing to take those risks. That's just me. I don't care. So yeah, that was how that experience went. I ended up driving back and making the mistake of hitting the closest route from where I was going. So it routed me through Canada this time, which is the shorter distance anyway, but I didn't know it was a shorter distance until I started driving. So then I started driving and I realized, oh, I'm going through the Canadian border. Oh, I'm such an idiot, but not really. Is that was the best choice I made. So I ended up stopping at a Airbnb on the way there that was cheap. It's like a hostel, multiple beds in a room, but luckily there's nobody in there. Because if there was someone in there, I would have canceled that bad boy right now and walked out. I ain't staying in no room with nobody that I don't know for one night with all this expensive equipment. You're out of your mind. And so I stay the night. They're great people. I dip out in the morning, go through Canada, make it back home the next day. I'm exhausted. I was just like, I was worn out. And so that pushed my timeline back to make this video a little bit. And also, the next day I was worn out again. So I just didn't do anything. And today's my birthday. And I went in for a follow-up interview to a job. And I also have another follow-up interview. And like I said before, I got education stuff in the works too for me. Because I applied for so many jobs at once and I didn't hear anything back. So I just made preparations in case I didn't hear anything back in the future. Now I'm getting hit back all at once. So you have options. That's great. I'm not going to sit here and complain, act like it's a bad thing. But that's really the reason why this has been a drawn out experience. But yeah, that was my experience. Those are the things that I had to battle. If there's anything that I would change, it would be to choose my first event in a different state that's not as expensive, that allows a lot more mobility and isn't as just, yeah, that offers a lot more mobility and isn't as expensive. Do I recommend starting off with local shows? I think from a technical standpoint, if you don't understand production, you absolutely should. But if you understand production, you'll be fine. You'll absolutely be fine. You just got to get used to working at high speeds and being able to push out stuff fast and that sort of thing. Because if you aren't prepared, you don't understand your equipment, you're second guessing your settings, you're not going to get it done. You're just not. Um, but yeah, I'm not that type of person to be like, you should do this, but I didn't go through those channels. I didn't do it. I did pretty well. I think I did damn good. And yeah, would I recommend would I recommend you starting off with a major promotion? No, though. No, but I think it's doable. But yeah, that's the video. Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna make sure I drop some other stuff this week. There's a fighter that's fighting this week. Her name is Yasmin Waragi. She's a phenomenal fighter. I think she's on the prelims. They're disrespecting her crazy. She's gonna be we always hear about fighters who people want to hype up like they're high caliber, they're entertaining. She is that. She is her. Like she is her, and she's not in boring fights. She fought 3 times in one night for Combate and won every single fight by finish. Like she's the real deal. That's why I got to talk about her. You know, real recognizes real. Anyway, thank you guys so much for this. I'm gonna make sure I put out more videos of this format as well as on top of the other stuff that I put out. And thank you for sticking with me. I'm Kairos in the right time and the right place.